Ignore the man behind the curtain. Hey, I just want to give you a little encouragement to read 2 Corinthians as we'll begin that series next Sunday. You remember, I don't know, it's been a couple of years ago, we went through 1 Corinthians, and we all know there's a 1 Corinthians and there's a 2 Corinthians. What you may not know is that there were a 3rd and 4th Corinthians. And there was another 5th Corinthians that was written about 150 years later by Clement of Rome, who was the pastor at Rome, and some of the same problems that Corinth dealt with in the 50s, they were still dealing with 70 years later, and it's interesting to read some of those letters. But within the Corinthian correspondence in 1st, 2nd Corinthians, there are allusions to other writings, the sorrowful letter, for example, and just some really neat things. And, you know, sometimes, we see all of the theology, the teachings, the background of the apostles and so forth. And, occasionally we would like to just be able to peek into their personal life and just say, I wonder what Paul's personal life was like. What did he struggle with? Did he have ups and downs and so forth like we all do? Well, I don't know of a book in the New Testament that gives you insight autobiographically into the personal life of the Apostle Paul more than 2 Corinthians. It's a very revealing letter. It was just written a year after 1 Corinthians, about 56 A.D., wrote it during his 3rd missionary journey when he was in Macedonia. And he begins the letter, and it's the passage we'll be dealing with next week, of talking with the most difficult time he had ever had in his life, and how it became so awful and so difficult that he says in that first chapter, I came to the point of despising life itself. He didn't want to go on. So, is that a teaser or what? All right, so read 2 Corinthians chapter 1 for next week. Today is kind of an interlude message. Just chose it from the book of Psalms, Psalms 125. And it's a message to kind of prepare us for the new year, for any resolutions that you might be thinking about. So turn to the book of Psalms in the Old Testament. And I don't believe, in fact, I'm most certain, I looked it up just to make sure, but some time ago we were doing a series entitled on Wednesday nights, The Greatest Psalms of the Bible. And selectively I chose a number of those and we went through them. And I looked to see if we had dealt with Psalm 125, and we had not. So I'm excited to say that we're going to get to do that this morning, and I consider it to be another one of those great Psalms of the Bible, as they all are. And I've entitled the message, A Resolution with a Real Payoff. A real payoff. So, anytime you make a resolution, you're thinking, if I follow this resolution, then there's going to be a benefit for it. There's going to be a payoff. I'm going to make a resolution to lose that 10 pounds I gained since Thanksgiving. And assuming you do it, then that's the payoff. So is there one resolution that we could all make that might just encircle and encompass and take in all the other resolutions and have a way of dealing with them all? Wouldn't that be good? One resolution fits all? I don't know if this is it or not. I think it has the possibilities of being that. And the resolution would be this: to completely, 100%, totally trust and entrust yourself to the Lord. And when you stop and think about it, if you are 100% committed or would make that step, to what degree would that really satisfy all those other little resolutions? They all dovetail together. And, total unconditional commitment to the Lord is an area that, unless you're trying really hard, you're probably not in that area, 100% committed, taking up your cross daily, as Jesus says, and following Him is what we're supposed to do. Jesus said, if you're 100% committed to me, that's a commitment that goes above and beyond every other single thing. So as we're going to move into what that might suggest in your life, think about it right now before we read the text. What would that suggest? If you were going to say, I'm going to trust the Lord 100%, I'm going to entrust myself, I'm going to commit myself 100% to the Lord, 2019, what would that mean for you? How would you be different? How would you think different? How would you behave different? What areas would actually change in your life? So that's the goal, is to trust in the Lord, and that actually becomes the phrase in verse 1 that we're going to begin reading right now. It's a relatively short psalm, 5 verses, so let's just read the entirety of it together. So, he begins, those, that's you and me, we're going to do this, right? Amen? I didn't hear any yips. All right. All right. Those who trust in the Lord. So what's the title of the message? A resolution with a real payoff. This is the benefits of trusting in the Lord. Those who trust in the Lord, what are you going to be like if you do that? Well, we find first of all, you're going to be like Mount Zion, which can't be moved, abides forever. And as the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord is going to surround you. The psalmist says, his people. From this, not just this moment, but from this time forth and forever. Wow, that'd be all right. Now, a little complicated statement here in verse 3 that we'll explain when we come through it, so I'm just going to read it for now. For the scepter of wickedness shall not rest, and here's the phrase I'm going to zero in on the land allotted to the righteous. Just write down, that's going to be my promised land. Let the righteous reach out their hands to iniquity. And then he says in verse 4, do good, O Lord, to those who are good. Would you like God to do you good? Just do you good this year? Kind of a neat phrase. And to those who are upright in their hearts, as for such as turn aside to their crooked ways, we're not going to do that, right? The Lord shall lead them away with the workers of iniquity. And I like the little conclusion here. Peace be upon Israel. Now, you can put your name right there. 2019, peace be upon me. Because I am going to trust completely and totally in the Lord. How many would consider that as a New Year's resolution? If you're not willing to do that, you're not taking up cross daily and following me. Okay. Well, we're going to spell it out, and I'm going to share with you why you should do that. I'm here to persuade you to entrust yourself daily to the Lord in this coming year. And I'm going to persuade you by showing you what the payoff's going to be. You ready? Payoff number 1, Roman numeral number 1, verse 1, just like always, verse at a time. The first payoff for trusting completely in 2020, trusting God completely in 2020, is that you won't be shaken no matter what happens. With whatever happens, good or bad, if you trust completely in the Lord, you don't have to allow that to completely shake you loose. Does that make sense? Well, let's just kind of pick that apart a little bit. He says those who trust in the Lord are going to be like Mount Zion, which can't be moved. And so there's some special words here. This word moved, or this word in the Hebrew, the word batak, is rightly translated here, the word trust. It's a very simple word. We see it many times in the Old Testament. And it means to hang upon someone or something. If you can see this picture of a child just hanging on its mother or father, arms around that mother or father's neck, and you're carrying, people, American natives, Indians, used to have papooses on their back where the little baby would tag along. Today we have front papooses. Do you see them? A lot of the moms will have them, or actually dads. And it's around your neck, and there's a little casement here, and you can see that little baby all tucked in, tucked in. Just, it means to fasten to someone like a baby papoose that carries your child is the idea. It's the same word, by the way, and here's a little bit more familiar verse. How many of you can quote Proverbs 3:5 or whatever that is right there in that general area? 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not into your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. The word trust, same word there, same word in Psalm 125. Proverbs 16:20, you're probably not familiar with this proverb, but it uses the word trust. And he says, trust in the Lord forever. Forever. Isaiah says, trust in the Lord forever. Blessed is he who trusts in the Lord. So the payoff for trusting and clinging to God is that you're not going to be shaken. You're not going to be moved with whatever happens in life. And I can just tell you already, based on 2019, you're going to have some stuff happen. Stuff happens that's going to rock your boat. It's going to shake your world. Things just happen. And this is one way. The word mote here, or mot, it's kind of a strange pronunciation in Hebrew, mot, means immovable, unshakable, untoppable, one who does not deviate or move off course when your personal earthquake hits. And that happens. Now, he compares it in verse 1. He said, those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion. And Mount Zion can refer spiritually to some things about God. It has eschatological definitions that refer to our promised land in heaven. But in this kind of situation, it's probably just referring to the highest point in Jerusalem. And it's just a mountain. If we were to use this phrase for the United States and we were writing this, we would probably say something like that. Those who trust in the Lord are like Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. Now, you know what Cheyenne Mountain is? Cheyenne Mountain is now, after its 60th anniversary, is known to most as the most secure, immovable military facility in the world. It's behind 2,000 feet of granite. It's got these huge, big doors, and it's known as NORAD. And you could basically drop a 5-megaton bomb within a mile of NORAD, and the people inside would be all right. That's what you call immovable. We have insurance against certain things. We don't have atomic bomb insurance, but we have earthquake insurance. How many of you have earthquake insurance? You do. I did for a while. I think I discontinued it, but I don't know. We were having so many tremors, I thought, well, maybe I should have it or whatnot. But, I want you just to think about various things that happen. When that bomb goes off in your life, when that earthquake happens, when that storm occurs, and you're needing prayer, and you're just feeling like Paul did in 2 Corinthians, as we're going to talk about, that life's not worth living. It's just so difficult right now. I don't know if I can go another step. By just simply entrusting yourself to the Lord, you won't be shaken. Doesn't mean you're not going to have bad times. It just means you will be able to survive the normal earthquakes of life that happen. It's amazing that you would say we're talking about earthquakes, because I was watching the news this morning, and there is a new fault in California that is connected to the San Andreas Fault. It's called the Garlock Fault. And they were showing pictures of it, and there's some rumblings going on there. There's about 200 faults there, but they're saying that due to this fault that connects to the San Andreas Fault, and that if something happens there like they're thinking it will likely create a earthquake on the magnitude of 8.0. And they're fully expecting this to happen in our lifetime, I guess you would say. Maybe even much, I don't know how you say much sooner in our lifetime, because we don't know what that is, but you understand what I'm saying. So, there's things that can just blow up all around us and can shake our world, and that's difficult. So we need strength for that. So a resolution: trust completely in the Lord. Let's look at Roman numeral number 2, verse 2. And this is a second payoff for trusting God completely in 2020. And that is that if you do that, you will not only be unshaken or immovable in that sense, but secondly, you'll also be surrounded by the presence of God all year long. Or really, the limit is not a year plan, it's forever and ever. So surrounded. Let's read verse 2. He says, "As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people from this time forth and forever." Surrounding, that has comforting feelings for me. Somebody who's just there to surround you with love. Sometimes we gather around people who are hurting and just pray for them. Jesus used kind of a phrase like that. He says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how many times I would have just surrounded you like a mother hen surrounds her chickens, and yet you wouldn't let me," kind of thing. God desires to surround you. This word surround has a suggestion of the word circle in it. It's the word sabiv in Hebrew. It's a neutral word. So it can mean just something neutral, like it does in Exodus 27:17, where it talks about the surrounding pillars of the court. Nothing there spiritual, nothing negative, positive. It's just, you just see this court, and here's these pillars surrounding it. So it can just be a neutral word. It can also be a negative word, such as we would see in Deuteronomy 12, where it talks about referring to the enemy's surrounding armies that are surrounding you, and man, they're ready to move in. Here we see it used very positively. And in this case, it's not your enemies who are surrounding you, if you'll trust in him, but it's God himself. He is big enough to completely encompass you and surround you in your time of need. And that word surround is a word, this word that I quoted you, this word sabiv, that means a circle. He will completely encompass, surround you, encircle you during that time. And you can picture that any way you want. You can picture it as him just wrapping his arms around you in a big circle, if you will. When I thought of circle, because of some things I had been reading, I thought of pi r squared, which is the formula. I've been thinking a lot about pies, but pi r squared is the formula for determining the area of a circle. What's pi? That's a constant, and it's an irrational number, and it is 3.14159. The Guinness Book of World Record, and this is just recent this year, came to figuring pi. Emma Haruka was the one who done it, to 31 trillion digits. And there was no repetition. And so this is basically what you would refer to as an infinite decimal. So it's 3.14159 out forever. Forever. So and a particular individual, you recognize the name, Carl Sagan, wrote a novel years ago entitled Contact. And in his novel, he suggests that this number, Archimedes constant, 3.14 pi, is God's number because it reflects infinity. And in that, it is, there was a thing on Netflix about coding and how pi is a universal constant. There's two theories in mathematics. Do we create mathematics to understand our world, or do we discover mathematics like pi as something that God has established as basic code for the world? So you say, well, all you're talking about is this number. You know what pi is? If you take the circumference of a circle, you take a circle and you take a measuring tape and go all the way around it, that's the circumference. And if you divide that by its diameter, every single time, no matter whether the circle is this big or whether it's planet Earth, it's always going to come out to be pi. 3.14159 out trillions and trillions of decimal points. And it's infinite. And so that infinity sense, that eternal sense is what's suggested here. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds, He puts this infinite circle around you that is capable of handling anything you go through, that it is time forth, from this time forth and forever. That's basically infinity. Now you say, are you reading too much into pi here? I mean, after all, we're just talking about the area of a circle. Pi is much more complicated than that. Some of you know that. Some of you may not. Pi is a constant that is a huge part of most formulas concerning physics. If you take pi squared, 3.14 whatever, multiply it times itself, square it, you end up with another constant that determines the gravity of the earth. I mean, that's how it's connected concerning physics. And I started thinking, how could that be? I mean, we're talking about anything that pertains to an arc, anything that pertains to a circle or a partial circle has this code, this irrational number, pi, built into it. That's infinite in its decimal points. And nobody seemed to have the answer. And I came up with the answer this morning. What can I say? No, I honestly think there was something there. I'm going to ask Rhonda. I called her this morning, and I forgot to ask her that question. Dr. McKee, she's professor of mathematics. But why would pi, which pertains to the area of a circle, have anything to do with the gravity of Earth? Well, what is Earth? It's a circle. I don't know. I'll let you know next week. So God is infinite in His care. He is infinite in His care for you. He is infinite in His love. I want you to think of this now. God is infinite in His love. He's infinite in His power. That's why we refer to Him as being omnipotent. He's infinite in His knowledge. He is omniscient. He's infinite in His love, that God so loved, that's pi, so loved the world that He gave. I also asked Rhonda, and she told me, she goes, pi is in the Bible. And there is a reference to the number 3. It's not spelled out in all of its numbers or anything, as having to do with a cup, an ark, a circular type object it's in the Old Testament. So you may want to Google that or something. Pi has such significance to intellectual people like ourselves that on February 14th of next year, it's Pi Day. And they do all these strange mathematical computations and new things and so forth with it. So surrounded, if number two, the second payoff for trusting God completely in 2020 is that you will be surrounded infinitely by the presence of God forever. All year long, forever and ever. Is that neat or what? Oh, come on. I worked hard on that illustration. I don't normally study physics for these sermons. I just want you to know that. I thought I kind of went the extra mile there. But all right, Roman numeral number 3, verse 3. The third payoff for trusting God completely in 2020 is that you will become special in God's eyes. Anytime you are a child of God, you're special. Even being created by God means you're special. But particularly as a child of God who is committed to God, that theological word for special can mean the Hebrew word for righteousness or holiness, special. Like the utensils in the temple are special. They're holy. They're only to be used for priestly type things. And you and I, as God's children, are only to be used for godly type things. And so, remember when I told you, it says, for the scepter of the wickedness shall not rest on the land allotted to the righteous. You know why? Because that land that we call the Holy Land, is special. It's special. We as Americans give it pretty high regard. And the opposite of that isn't pretty at all, lest the righteous reach out their hands to iniquity. Christmas is all about a special person, Jesus Christ. It's all about a special birth, the virgin birth. It was about a special star, the nativity star. It was about a special announcement from the angelic host and some very special parents, the Virgin Mary and Joseph. And everything was special about it because Jesus Christ is special. He is Lord of lords. He's not just a Lord, He's Lord over all lords. He's not just a king, He's king over all kings. He's unique, He's special. There's none like Him. He's the Alpha and the Omega, that pi, that infinity there. I ran home real quick this last week, just one night over to go see my mother up in Council Bluffs. And for some reason, I thought of something that happened to me several years before. I was there at Bluffs Mall, which isn't much of a mall anymore because malls are going down, and that one's just about gone. But I remember meeting there in one of those big walkways a guy as I was leaving who came up to me with looked like a Superman t-shirt on, walking a little funny and speaking very, it was just hard to comprehend. I could tell something was wrong. He could not speak well. But he just came up very positively to me and asked me if I would like a copy of his book. And the name of the book was Superman Don't Live Here Anymore. And it was a reference to himself. Because Scott grew up in a little community, Honey Creek, Iowa. He was a triathlete in baseball, track, and football, as I recall. Went to college. He thought he was so special he could do and get away with anything, and so he writes in this book how he had a vial of cocaine in his pocket while he was playing football that he would take to thinking that he could play better football, and he was just full of himself. Drunk a lot of the time, on drugs, and just a wild boy. And basically had a very serious car accident, had another car accident after that. It left him in a coma for, I think, 9 months. For a year, he could not speak. And through that whole experience, he found Christ as a Savior. And there he was in the mall, and I just about put him off. I mean, he just looked kind of weird to me because of his physical and his brain damage problems, his inability to speak, and, he was coming up like this, and I just wasn't sure who he was, but for whatever reason, I listened to what he had to say. I took his book. I couldn't find the copy of it this morning, but it's somewhere in my library. And I listened to him tell a story. Everybody's story is different. He thought he was special because of his athletic prowess. In some way, I guess you'd say today he has special needs because of the damage that occurred from the accident. And yet, in another way, he would say he is now more special than ever because he is a child of God. He is chosen of God. He is loved by God. And he is surrounded by God's love. And if there's one thing that you will get as you entrust yourself to the Lord, as a person who's coming to Christ for the first time, or someone who just needs to renew their commitment and their resolve to follow Christ every single day of the year coming, that you will find yourself in a very special relationship with God that you've never had before, or maybe you've not had in a very long time. Maybe some of us need that T-shirt. Superman don't live here anymore. Randy doesn't live here anymore. This year it's going to be Christ and Christ alone. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about Him. Number 4. Finally, verses 4 and 5. The fourth payoff for trusting God completely, this is your resolution for 2020, is that you will be supplemented, key word, with God's goodness. Goodness. And that's where this do good phrase comes up. He says, do good, O Lord, to those who are good, and to those who are upright in their hearts. And I think that's just a way of saying someone who's just sincerely entrusted themselves and wants God's favor and who's going to trust the Lord. And as for such as turn aside to their crooked ways, the Lord shall lead them away with the workers of iniquity, but peace be upon Israel. As God does good to us, when you think about, boy, God is, how many of you would just say, if I were to ask you, and you would agree with this, that God was really good to you in 2019? Finishing up. Okay. Been a good year. Even if you would look back on maybe one of your more difficult years, maybe it was last year, maybe it was 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, one of those difficult years like Paul was going through in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 while he was in Macedonia in about 56 AD, one of the most difficult years in his life. If you were going through that kind of year, would you still be able to say that God was good to you that year? I think you probably would if you're a Christian, unless you just somehow got bitter against God or whatever. Well, when He is good to us, it's like a supplement. He is supplementing us with His goodness. I was listening to the news this morning, and Marcus Golden, who plays for the Giants, basically they recalculated his number of times that he had sacked the quarterback this last year, and by recalculating it, they discovered that he had actually sacked the quarterback 10 times. That kicked him into a whole new category with the NFL and his football organization, his team, which gave him a supplemental bonus to his normal salary. Now, I don't know what his normal salary was, but would you like to know what the bonus was? It was $1 million. That's what you call a bonus. Anytime you all would like to try that, we could experiment with it. But when we think of supplements, we think of things that help us. We take supplements. Sometimes we take supplements for our bodies. Bodybuilders will eat more protein or something. We take supplements for our minds. I can't remember the name of the supplement, but sounds like Rocky Balboa. No. supplements for the nervous system. We take supplements for sleep. We take supplements for our blood. The greatest supplement you can have is when God rewards us as we entrust ourselves to Him with His goodness. And He just chooses to bless us over and above what we might consider otherwise different. Deuteronomy 8:16 says, He fed you in the wilderness with manna, supplement, that He might humble you and test you to do good to you. So they may have seen the manna as kind of a supplement, even though they wanted to go back to Egypt where they could eat more garlic and onions than they were having out there in the wilderness. But He said this was to test you because later He was going to do something really good for them. And you know what that was? That was that promised land. That was what that was all about. So when God does us good, that's a good thing. It's a good supplement. It works. The word well and the word good are usually the same word. It's just a matter of whether it's comparative, superlative, whatever, well, good, better, all that kind of stuff. Well, we use the word well and good and well off. For you were well off in Egypt, Moses said in Numbers 11:18. Deuteronomy 5:30 says, you shall walk in the ways of the Lord that you may live and do well, and it will be well for you. And when it's well for you, that just means God done you good. That's this word here. So one way to find God's goodness and to see Him doing really good things in your life is just say, my resolution every single day in 2020 is going to be, I'm just going to trust God completely with my life. All the stuff, all my concerns, all my worries, my life, my worship. It's going to be all about being completely trusting and entrusted to the Lord. So as the worship team comes, look, I said I really like this conclusion, and so I included as part of my conclusion, the best payoff for trusting God completely in 2020 is that you will receive peace from the Prince of Peace. Peace, He said, be upon Israel. Would you receive God's peace today? Would you receive God's presence today? Would you, in turn, offer yourself and trust yourself completely to Him today and test and see if these benefits, if these payoffs won't be part of what God blesses you with. Let's stand together as we sing. Would you trust Him with Grover as your next church home if you're looking for a church? Would you trust Him with your soul if you need salvation? You come.